And how important is trying to get the family on board with your mission? How important is that where possible?
Another one that I'll get emotional at is that things don't always go the way you plan. I came down with ulcerative colitis before the Barcelona games, and 10 weeks before it was touch and go if I would go or not, because of the condition I had. For those who don't know what ulcerative colitis is, it's inflammation of the large and small intestine. And I trained through, even though my performance is getting worse on a day-to-day basis, and cope with this condition I didn't know that I had at the time. I just thought it was food poisoning, and the symptoms of food poisoning were just about of being out there. But week after week, my performance was going off and off and off. I went and saw a consultant that my wife took me to, and he read me a list off of about 15 things it could be. And at the bottom of the list, it was ulcerative colitis. He said, it can't be that, because you wouldn't be able to do what you've been doing up until this time. And of course, next day I went in for a biopsy, 12 biopsies taken from your intestines. That was like you've been kicked in the stomach several times. And I only missed one day of training. I was back training the following day. Once they found out what I had, got me onto the right treatment, I bounced back quite quickly. And this took a number of months before I was actually diagnosed. If I hadn't been training on a day-to-day basis and stopped because I wasn't performing very well and getting myself better, I wouldn't have been at the level to be able to compete. So that was sort of one side of it. And then in 97, I came down with diabetes. My grandfather had diabetes in his late 60s, early 70s. I was very, very young at the time. He gave up the will to live at that point. My grandmother had passed away a couple of years before. His life was devastated at that point, and he sort of gave up. So what I knew about diabetes is that it's a pretty bad condition that you've got. And I was the age of 35 when I was diagnosed. I thought my rowing career was over. Fortunately, I was sent to the local hospital, diabetic centre, and there was a guy called Ian Gallen who was the young consultant, and that I was with him for 3 hours. This is where it's different from my life now and most other people, is that being an athlete, I phoned my wife up that was still a volunteer as the team doctor at that point. She does get paid for it now, but she was at her own practice. And she said, oh, you better go and make an appointment to see your GP. How many of us can get an appointment with our GP on the same day? I could. And then being sent, okay, that your blood sugar levels are through the roof. We'll send you off to go into a consultant to Wickham General on the same day. Things like that just don't happen. And so I went up there expecting to be told that I couldn't carry on. And after 3 hours, he said, well, I see no reason why you can't achieve what you want to achieve and win your 5th gold medal in 3 years' time.
Wow.
And if you want to give it a go, I'm behind you and I'll support you all the way. He didn't have a clue of how he was going to do it. When he knew that I was coming up, he was scanning the internet for sports people with diabetes, and there's very few, or there was at that time. There was a guy called Gary Mabbott, who was a Tottenham and England footballer. Their training is very different to what we do. I haven't seen Gary for a while. I hope he's okay. It was this whole process. But he had so confidence, thinking, of course I'm going to give it a go. And the first race that we did was probably 6 months later of being diagnosed. He wasn't with us. And he calls it the Doctor Who moment. He was watching, it was live on TV by the BBC. And he was hiding behind the sofa, peering over the top, not knowing quite what was going to happen. He'd convinced me that I wasn't going to have any problems. Actually, the racing side of it was the easy side of it. It was the training to get to that side that was the difficult. That most of the patients that he had, even though he was interested in sport, were more of type 2 diabetics and tend to be more older people. And as an athlete, I could explain to him what I was going through. So I would wake up on a set test on a rowing machine and say, okay, that you got this test of going, you feel good. You're thinking, why can't I do a personal best, which would have been a world record at that particular time. You feel great. You go into it. Normally with fatigue, when that starts to hit, it tapers off. But it was like a light being switched from on to off, energy-wise. And I could explain this to him, which he hadn't sort of had patients before that could explain in the detail that you were at. And from that, we were able to get back. But when I was diagnosed with the diabetes, I also came back with a colitis as well. One flared up the other. I wasn't in a good state. 16 of us went away of the men's team to South Africa on a training camp. And that's probably the lowest bit that I've ever been in my life. Because we weren't doing any water work out there. It was cycling in the morning, going to the gym in the afternoon, ergo and rowing machine and weights. And that you go out cycling. I remember very clear this one day that of being dropped from the group almost immediately, struggling to carry on. If you're not in the peloton in a cycling group, you fall behind even quicker. And we're out on the roads for 3 hours of endurance cycling, but we have one stop, which tends to be quite a steep hill, about 3/4 of the way up. And there was a pull off there where everyone stops for refueling, food, fill up the water bottle. The time I got there, they were all grabbing their bikes to get back on again, and thinking, what do I do? Do I stop and get some food, change my water bottle, or do I just go? We've got about 200 meters before we get to the brow of the hill. If I can get there, then there's a very long downhill where I can freewheel and maybe able to get a bit of energy back and try to stay on the back of the group. Just about with the group as we go over the top, and quarter of the way down, I get a puncture in my tyre. Jürgen, my coach, pulls up in the minibus and says, okay, Steve, put your bike in. That's training finished for today. And I said, no, I've got to complete this session. So I took a puncture kit, sorted myself out, got back on the road, obviously miles behind everybody else. But it was that mental side of it, is that I knew every training session I'd been doing at that point was proving to everybody, especially me, that I wasn't at the level before. The level that you're producing is not good enough. And so I'd convinced myself that when I got back and I had to finish this training session, that's the mental belief, is that I'm not going to give in, but I'm going to finish this. But once I get back to the hotel, I'm packing my bag, going to the airport, it's over. Eventually got back. Everyone finished their lunch by the time I got back. Threw my bike into the garage. Didn't really care very much about that at the particular time. Went up to my room and laid on my bed. I was just so exhausted, I couldn't even have the energy to pack my bag. And while I was laying there thinking, well, you just completed that session. And what was going through in my mind was that every time you're turning the pedals of the bike, is that of just one more turn. I can do one more turn, then I'm going to stop. Well, you did that one. Just do one more. And that's what got me back. And I was laying in my bed thinking, okay, it wasn't very good performance, but you finished that training session. The next session is 20K on the rowing machine. Perhaps you can finish that. Yeah. And so instead of packing my bag, stupidly, I put on my kit and went to the gym with everybody else. Again, performance miles behind everybody else. And again, it takes about a very low rate of striking very high power of each stroke. It takes about 2 seconds to do that whole cycle of rowing, pull, and recovery. And it's amazing how quickly the mind thinks. And you're thinking, okay, this is awful. I'm absolutely exhausted. One more stroke. Just do one more and then stop. And you do one more stroke. You think, okay, perhaps I can do one more. then I'll stop. And you get through an hour and a half of training session by one stroke at a time, 2 seconds by 2 seconds. Turn of the crank of the bikes, you're talking of a fraction of a second. And that's what's getting it. There's no dream about going to the Olympics.
Love that.
There's no dream about them, no dream of standing on the podium, nothing about even racing. It's you're going to complete this session and then walk away with pride. And then something else brings you back.
I think that's really, really great.
And again,
one more call to an agent, one more viewing, one more deal analysis.
Well, when things are going well, the bigger picture all happens pretty straightforward. You don't have to worry about it. It's when things are not going right. That's when you've got to work hard. You've got to come up with something that's going to be able to get you through that process. Because over time, it will come back to some sort of... You may not be able to achieve your dreams and win Olympic gold medals, but you can certainly get to a higher level from that and give it your best shot. And I think it's the pride of the end of the day. People say to me of what happens if you didn't win your 5th gold medal in Sydney? Matt Pipton says, wouldn't be remembered because you do tend to survive on your last performance. But it depends what we lost for. If we lost because somebody else performed better than us, and we gave it our best shot and we didn't make it, wouldn't have liked it, but you shake their hands and saying, well done. What would have really hurt is that if you had cut some corners, if you had done something that didn't put you in your best position to able to compete, and then you lost, and there was something you could have done about it, I couldn't forgive myself for that.
Yeah. Well, the great news is that you did do it, and you stood there, and you got your 5th gold medal. Absolutely incredible. We are nearing the end of this incredible session. We're sitting here today with amazing individuals from all walks of life, business owners, property investors, highly successful 6-7 figure earners, people starting out in their journey. What would you like to say to anyone here to end this session, to give them some hope or some inspiration? What would be your 20 years of winning those medals at the top of your game? To summarize, what would be some golden nuggets that you could share with everyone in this room?
One, there's got to be a love for what you do. We can all do something we don't like for a short period of time. But to be successful at anything and to be successful year after year after year, you've got to have a love for it. That doesn't mean you have to love every second of the day. There's all sorts of training sessions that you quite enjoy doing and the things that you don't enjoy doing. When you're pushing yourself to your limit all the time and trying to push those barriers back, you've got to have that love for it. And I tell kids at school when I go to do school visits is that you've got to enjoy something 75% of the time. Actually, that could come down to 50% really, but making an impact at school is that if you don't get a kick out of what you're doing, go and find something else that does. You've got to have that inner belief of what you're trying to achieve, of breaking down the barriers, because whatever targets have set, that they've never been set before. You've got to find a way of doing it. Enjoy the path of getting there. Even though I tell that story about John Nabber, I still use that not on a daily basis, and not exactly the way that he broke it down into the chunks that he needed to do, but using that story in some ways to get to your next goal. The age of 63, closer to retirement. Unfortunately, rowing isn't a sport that pays any appearance fees, prize money, processes like that. Athletics at the moment, all athletics gold medal winners will get money from the Athletics Association for winning the medals this year, and they got money for winning gold medals last year in Paris. No other sport can afford to do that within the Olympic sports. And so whatever goal you've got of moving forward, that there is a way to break it down to get there. That may be like the John Nabber story, or spin it on the head to what I did for the charitable trust of the 5 million that I set myself. I actually hit 7.5 million in the 5 years of doing that. I don't have quite the same targets as I have had. As I sort of winding down in some ways, I'm playing a lot of bad golf. But one thing that I am dwelling over at the moment is the state of our rivers and our waterways are in a really bad way. Our water companies are not doing the right thing that they haven't invested in over the last 30, 40, probably 50 years, if not longer. And so I'm thinking, do I try and do something about that?
Yes.
Well, there you go. there may be, because the government won't do anything about it because they know it's going to cost them too much. But there may be a national petition coming out, and if I can sign up a few million people on that, then the government will take some notice of that. If we get more, then they'll have to do something about it. What I'm upset about this government, and sorry, it's a longer answer than what I'm upset about this government, they're talking a really good game, better than the previous governments have. But their planning, and this is very much a business thing, is that they're coming up with a 5-year plan to sort out the problems. In the next 5 years, they're saying they're going to halve the amount of sewage that is being pumped into our rivers. Brilliant, thank you. Moving in the right direction. But where's the 10-year plan? Where's the 25-year plan? So we're getting to a stage that we're not pumping any into our lakes, rivers, and seas. That's what we've got to move for. Governments tend to work on a short period of time. Elected for 5 years, they always say first year is clearing up the mess from the one before. We have 3 years of doing some business, and then we've got to try and get elected again, so we're not going to do anything. We'll give some giveaways. How can we run business in the way that our country is run? Sorry, getting a bit political here. And it's not just the government that we have, it's all governments that do that.
Wow.
So that's something that...
Right. Just to wrap, I don't know about you, I've got so many nuggets there, and I'm feeling inspired and even more motivated than I was when we started this event yesterday. So a big, big well done. Is that just been fantastic, team? Has that been fantastic? Yeah. Can we please stand and a big round of applause for Sir Steve Redgrave, the greatest Olympian of all